Welcome all. Welcome to the Eco Master classes by Dr. Amartya. Today we have the third class in the series, and today's topic is systolic function, EF, and measurement by TTE. And I have directly started the introduction of the class because I know that nobody needs an introduction for Dr. Amarja. She is a well-known person in the class circle and in all the academic circles in the field of eco and cardiac anesthesia. Welcome, Dr. Amarja, and thank you for taking out time from your busy schedule. And I will hand over the screen now to you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Nilesh, sir, for your kind words. And in this series of Eco Master class, this is the third talk. And up till now, what we have covered is transthoracic waves, the basic physics and homology. And this is the third one, the systolic function, ejection fraction measurement, and cardiac output measurement by TTE. So as we all know, systolic function is very important, and whenever we see echocardiography report, our eyes are just drawn to the EF. We want to know how is the EF of this patient. So there may come some situations wherein you may have an echocardiograph which is done like 6 months before or 2 months before, and now you want to know the echo of ejection fraction of your patient. Then what are you going to do? Are you going to like just guess the echo, or you would call the echo machine and just do it right away for yourself? So let us see what we can do and how much we can help our patients by knowing this modality of echocardiography. So I have a disclaimer that a few images and videos are taken from internet, and the credit of which goes to the original authors, which are freely downloadable, that are only taken for this presentation and for educational purpose only. The indications for echo suspected systolic dysfunction, as I have explained earlier, these are mainly the valvular heart diseases, any chest pain patient, angina or unstable angina patient, or any ischemic heart disease patient. For the risk assessment, prognosis assessment of the therapy for myocardial infarctions and interventions in the coronary artery diseases. If you are suspecting your patient might have heart failure, then you do echocardiography for systolic dysfunction. For the cardiomyopathies and congenital heart diseases, for systemic hypertension and critically ill patients as well, and for screening of cardiovascular and pulmonary diseases. So now coming directly to systolic dysfunction, how to diagnose it on echocardiography. What I want to emphasize is there are two important criteria when it comes to saying that the patient has decreased EF or systolic dysfunction, and those two criteria are mainly sluggish ventricular contraction. If this is the LV, if you say that this is the cross-sectional area or the short axis of the LV, if you find that the LV is sluggishly contracting and the walls of the LV are not thickening uniformly while contracting, then you have a diagnosis of systolic dysfunction. Now, I will be explaining later with the help of videos and pictures, all these things, but just keep in mind that sluggish ventricular contractions and not thickening uniformly of the walls of LV indicates systolic dysfunction. Now, which are the key views to assess systolic function? First is the parasternal long axis view, the parasternal short axis view, the apical 4-chamber view, apical 2-chamber view, apical 5-chamber view in which the aorta opens, and also the subcostal view may be of help. Ejection fraction, as we all know, is the most commonly used index of global ventricular systolic function, and it is done by ejection fraction. Several studies have shown that EF is amongst the most important prognostic parameters in cardiovascular diseases. Stroke volume, cardiac output, rate of rise of LV systolic pressure, which is called as dP by dt, are also measures of systolic function and can be derived by echocardiography. Today we are not going to see dP by dt, rest all we are going to see. And as we all know, Ejection fraction normally it is said when it is more than 55%. LV dysfunction is mild if the ejection fraction is between 45 to 55%. 30 to 45 is moderate LV dysfunction, and severe LV dysfunction is EF is less than 30%. When we are knowing about EF and systolic function, we have to know about regional wall motion abnormality. I have explained it earlier. If you have seen my main lecture on echocardiography for anesthesiologist, or what you have to know about the echocardiography report, that also we have done earlier. And then in that also I have explained very nicely the regional wall motion abnormalities. Now the name itself tells regional is pertaining to some region. Wall is wall of LV. Motion is something related to motion of movement of that wall. Abnormality is something that is not normal. So there is, if you say that this is the wall of LV, there is something at some region of this wall and the motion of which is abnormal. So why do you want to know about this? Because this indicates there's myocardial oxygen supply and demand imbalance, and either the supply is not happening or is hampered due to coronary blockage, or the demand is very high. So if there is, they say, even before the ECG changes occur, or the PA pressures or the PCWP or the LA pressure rises, regional wall motion abnormality comes. That is why echo is of so much importance. If you have any patient intra of going to sudden hypotension without any bleeding or without any other signs which may tell you that this patient lands into hypotension due to this reason, and patient has some cardiac element earlier, you can just keep the probe on the chest and diagnose some regional wall motion abnormality. If you find any regional wall motion abnormality, that is indicative of ischemia, myocardial ischemia. That is imbalance between myocardial oxygen supply and demand. So, how do you diagnose? Is it very important? The word RWM may be intimidating for you, but it is not. It is very easy. Every echo report has RWMA mentioned in it. So either it will be in the form of mild hypokinesia of anterolateral wall of LV, or severe hypokinesia of anterior wall of LV, or something like that. So today let us see what is all this is. So if you say this is normal, so it is the normal is the endocardium. It is moving towards the center of the LV during systole more than 30%. More than 30%. Mild, if it is moving 30% to 10%, means up to from 10 to 30%. Severe hypokinesia is less than 10%. Akinesia is some part of the LV is not moving at all. So if I say this is not moving at all. So this is akinesia, and this kinesia is this moves away. This moves actually away. If you see this moves actually away. So this is called as regional wall motion abnormality. It is very important to diagnose regional wall motion abnormalities in order to know the ischemia is happening due to which coronary. So there is something known as wall motion score index as well. This hypokinesia, akinesia, dyskinesia, they are all given scores 1 to 4, and then what you do is you have to sum up all this. Like you have 2 hypokinetic areas, then 2 into 2, 3 hypokinetic area, 3 hypokinetic, then 3 into 2, and you have to divide it by the total number of segments that you have measured, and then you get this score. This is an index of global LV function. It is derived as a sum of segmental scores divided by the number of segments evaluated. The normal score is 1. Increasing score denotes worse prognosis. We usually don't do this routinely, but as a matter of fact, you should know about wall motion score index. To know more about echocardiography and LV and systolic function, one has to get acquainted with this 17 segment model. This might seem very intricate for you, but it is not. What is the 17 segment model? American Heart Association has proposed to this model, and what they have done is they have just divided this LV into 17 segments. Now you will say, how do I remember these 17 segments? No, it is not at all difficult. What they have done is they have just treated this LV as four compartments or just at three levels. This is the base, as you say, this is the base wherein the mitral valve is situated. Okay, so this is the base, this is the mid at the papillary muscle level, and this is at the apical is where the papillary muscles end is the apical, and one is the apex. So what they have done is circularly they have divided these segments into 6 areas. Again at the mid level into 6 areas. At the apical level into 4 areas. And 1 at the apex. So 6 and 6 becomes 12. 12 plus 4 is 16 and 1 17. You got my point. At 3 levels, what they have done is at 3 levels they have cut the LV into 6 segments. At the mid level again 6 where the mitral valve ends, so the mid ventricle. At the apical level again into 4 and 1 at the apex. Okay, so at least you got to know what is this. Now, how do you remember all these segments? That is also very easy. To remember this, first you have to know the walls of LV in all this. Or let me just tell you first I will tell you on the patient itself. So you have so many images and videos to see today. So if you can see here, if this is a cross-sectional area and if this is the short axis of the LV, so this is the LV, this whole round is the LV and this is the RV. Okay, so how do you know how it is, like why it is so? Here, as I told you in the last talk, this has to be the transducer here. So this has to be your RV and then comes the LV. Okay, now if this is placed on the anterior chest wall, this area has to be anterior. So this is the wall of LV, anterior wall of LV. If you can see my cursor, this is anterior wall of LV. Opposite to which will be the inferior wall. Opposite to LV, LV is like this in the chest. This is the anterior, opposite has to be the inferior wall. Okay. This has to be the lateral wall, and since this is the RV, this has to be the interventricular septum. So this is the septal wall. Is it easy? So now I tell you, this is anterior wall, this is inferior wall, this is septal wall, this is lateral wall. So what does the anteroseptal wall? This becomes anterolateral wall. This becomes inferolateral wall. This becomes inferoseptal wall. Am I clear? Now if you remember, you just pen down all these things. Okay, someday when you are reading this, and you will get to know that the opposite wall, see, anterior to the opposite of anterior is the inferior wall. Anterolateral is inferoseptal. Anteroseptal is inferolateral. Okay, so those are not going to change anything because the LV is going to be in the same position all the time. So you have to just know this. That is why I just went 4-5 slides afterwards, and then I showed you all this how the walls of LV look like or how they are situated. Now let us go back and see. If I would have told you this directly, you would have thought that it is very difficult. So in this video, if you see, in this picture, if you see, this is the anterior and inferior. Previously they used to call it posterior, but now the nomenclature has been changed. It is called as inferior. So this is the septal, and this is the, here will be the lateral. Okay. So this is now the parasternal long axis view. In the parasternal long axis view, this will be the RV, and this has to be the interventricular septum. If this is the septum, this has to be the anteroseptal area, wall, anteroseptal wall. This is the inferolateral wall. Okay. This is 4 chamber. In the 4 chamber, this is anterolateral wall and the inferoseptal wall. In the apical, it is the anterior wall and the inferior wall. So you have to be acquainted with all these things, all this nomenclature, and this also tells you with the color of the arteries. If you can appreciate the arteries which are supplied, that are also indicated over here. So that was about the 17 segment model, and yes, and so wait a minute. I will just tell you that all this means what I told you of the walls. They are at three levels, and as I told you, the anterior, inferior, lateral, and then their anterocircal and anterolateral. All these are situated at the base and the mid cavity, where six are situated. At the apical four, that is anterior, inferior, circle, and lateral, and then there is the apical cup, which does not have cavity. It is only the extreme tip of the ventricle. Okay. So now coming to determination of ejection fraction. We are going to see four methods here today, which the most popular one and which is practiced worldwide readily and easily is the eyeballing method. The second is fractional shortening, fractional area change, and then the modified Simpson's method or the biplane method of discs. In the eyeballing method first, there are several studies which tell that this eyeballing method is a standard method. With some experience, we can judge the EF of the LV quite easily, and which can be correlated with quantitative ejection fraction by real-time 3D echocardiography. So if you are doing only eyeballing, that is also okay. Usually, we always do only eyeballing. We don't do the other methods. Like only the cardiologist they do for the echo report has to be given. Therefore, they do the fractional shortening method, and I think the eyeballing only two. They do, or I think they do only the LV dimensions. They don't even determine EF by that. They only do that for LV dimensions, which I am going to tell later. EF, even by cardiologist or anesthesiologist or echocardiographers, is done only by eyeballing method, and it is very easy. So let us see what should be looked for into an echocardiogram when you are eyeballing for the ejection fraction. See the inward movement of the endocardium. See for the thickening of the myocardium. See if the longitudinal motion of the mitral annulus is normal or not. And then judge the overall geometry of the ventricles, or ventricle, I mean. Okay. So now you see this every time in my previous lectures, if you have noted, I've shown eyeballing only in short axis. But here we have short axis as well, but I have purposefully taken the long axis this time because we should know in both the axis how to determine, or in apical four-chamber view as well, or short axis view as well. Precardial movement. If I'm putting this cursor over here, and if this is the center of the LV, see how much endocardium. What is endocardium? This inner line is moving towards the center, and you can judge this or see if it is coming from all sides of the LV. So yes, it is coming uniformly to the center. Yes, so I think this is a normal ejection fraction. See the thickening of the myocardium. Yes, what is thickening of the myocardium? Yes, it gets thickened. It thickens. So this is also uniform. See the longitudinal motion of the mitral annulus. See, if I keep the cursor on one part, later you can see that the mitral annulus goes down. Can you see? Yes, I am putting my cursor at one point, and when it is contracting, it actually goes below. Yes, towards the center. So that is also important. That is called as mitral annular plane of this mitral valve, and that is also important for the ejection fraction or this systolic function. And then the overall geometry of the ventricle. We have one video when the geometry, entire geometry is hampered, and let us see. So this is normal EF. If you can appreciate nicely, all the balls are moving inside. The geometry is patent, and the mitral annulus is also moving. Yes. So I don't find any problem with the LV over here. So I name it as a normal ejection fraction. So this is the graphic demonstration of the same. See, this is the base where will be situated. This is the apex, the anterior wall and the inferior wall. And if you see this wired structure, yes, and the LV, that is the endocardium, is coming inside equally. If you appreciate, okay, yeah. So get this ejection fraction. This is the again longitudinal axis. What I was talking about is if this is the center of the LV, does this wall move uniformly towards the center? No, it hardly moves. So these segments are akinetic. Few segments are literally akinetic. They are not moving at all. Akinetic segments. These are hypokinetic segments. Okay. See the mitral annular plane. Is it moving? It is not moving. The mitral annulus is not moving. So this is the mitral annular plane or the mitral annulus. It is not moving to that extent to have effective ejection fraction. So this is a definitely a reduced ejection fraction. Okay. So how much is this ejection fraction? Maybe 10%, 20 or 15%, maximum 20%. I'm not sure it's not a percent. Okay. 10 to 15%. Patient likely, maybe this patient may be for maybe having cardiomyopathy also, and maybe posted for cardiac transplant. Surely this patient needs cardiac transplant. And this is another video wherein you can appreciate what I was talking about, the geometry of the LV. Do you appreciate that the geometry of the LV has been hampered and this appears to be rounded structure now? The LV is always globular and elongated structure. This appears to be rounded for us, right? So the thickening is also not uniformly happening. The segments of the LV are hypokinetic. The mitral plane is the mitral annulus is also not moving that much. So definitely a severe LV dysfunction with ejection fraction of around 15 to 20% by eyeballing method. Now this is again the short axis of the LV. It is very easy to determine in the short axis of the LV. See in the center the walls do not move at all, and now you can tell that the few segments like the anterolateral segment is totally akinetic or severely hypokinetic, you can say, and there is hardly any. Again, 15 to 20% might be the EF of this patient. Now there is one more video. What do you see in this video? This video is a short axis of the LV at the mitral valve level. That is the basal short axis view. This is called as basal because it is taken at the base of the LV, and at the base is situated the mitral valve. So this is the mitral valve. Okay. So if this is the center, it is moving uniformly. Okay. It is moving uniformly inside, but then is there any problem over here? Thickening of the LV, can you appreciate it is severely thickened LV wall. So this is a hypertrophied LV. So this can be a hypertrophied cardiomyopathy. Yes. So this is something what a hypertrophied cardiomyopathy looks like. There is severely hypertrophied LV muscle, and the ejection fraction is reduced, but maybe around 40% or so in this patient. Okay, so that was about the ejection fraction and the eyeballing method. And now let us come to other methods, which is the fractional shortening. What is fractional shortening? Fractional shortening is just we have to see in one plane, like only the diameter, internal diameter of the LV is seen, and it is taken usually in the M mode. You may take it in 2D mode as well, and I'll show you both the methods. I will let you know today both the methods, and just remember the formula. LVIDD is diastole, LVIDS is in systole, and divided by that in diastole into 100. So what is fractional shortening is LV internal diameter. How is it taken? It is taken in M mode. So what you do is you take a short axis of the L and put a M mode. You have to just press the knob of M mode, and when you take the short axis of the LV and the M mode knob is pressed, something like this will come. Okay, so this is of the M mode of LV, and in this what is seen is this is only one dimensional structure. Okay, so whatever is happening only on this one line has come over here. So see, all the parameters will come here, such as n diastolic diameter, n systolic diameter, n diastolic diameter. So the narrowest cavity has to be the systole. So this is systole, and the dilated cavity has to be the diastole. So this is the diastole. So n diastolic diameter, n systolic diameter, and you can even take other like LVIDD. That is the here it can be taken like LV ID in the diastole and LV ID in the systole, and then the posterior wall and the interventricular septum as well. If you want to know how this is taken, this is the RV. So this has to be RV. Blood is always black. So this is the RV. Then comes the interventricular septum. So this is the interventricular septum, IVS. Then will be the systolic or the diastolic frame, whichever we have taken. Okay, so I am measuring the diastolic frame, systolic frame. So this is the systolic frame, and then here will be your the posterior wall of the LV, posterior wall of LV here. Okay, so when we see all these things, the machine automatically measures ejection fraction for us. It automatically does. All the machines automatically do. Otherwise, if it doesn't come, you have this formula LVIDD minus LVIDS, whatever we take the internal diameters upon LVIDD into 100. So the normal range of fractional shortening is 25 to 45% normal, and 20 to 24% is mild LV dysfunction, 50 to 90% is moderate LV dysfunction, and less than 40% is severe LV dysfunction. Even the LVIDD can be taken in 2D view. This is the 2D, wherein this is the interventricular septum has been measured, and the LV internal diameter during systole and diastole is taken now, and then the posterior wall. So this will also tell you the ejection fraction automatically in 2D view. Okay, that was in M mode and 2D mode as well. Okay, now from this M mode, again you can know about the various dimensions, that is the internal dimensions, and the normal internal dimension is very easy. The systolic dimension is around 30. So remember just 30, and during diastole it is 45 to 50. So just remember two numbers, that is 30 and 50. That should be good enough for you to assess by and large the LV dilatation or hypertrophic LV. Okay. The septum is always 1 centimeter. Just remember 0.6 to 1 centimeter or 0.6 to 9, but I remember only 1 centimeter. The septal thickness, that is interventricular septum, and the posterior wall thickness as well. So let me just tell you again. So this is normally 1 centimeter. This is also normally 1 centimeter. This has a range like 0.6 to 0.9 also, but I remember maximum is 1 centimeter both. And then LV internal diameter in diastole is around 50, 45 to 50, and in systole it is 28 to 32, or say just say 30. You can remember it that way. Okay. So that was all about LV dimensions. Now coming to fractional area change. So now we have seen only in one plane, that's fractional shortening. Now going to do the area change. This is done in mid-papillary short axis view, and what we have to do here is you have to just take the short axis view in diastole and systole and just press. How this is done? First you have to take the mid-papillary short axis view. Okay, when the mid-papillary short axis view is taken, you have to press the area in that. In the area, you will get this, or you can just press the cursor, and later you can click the area button, and you will get some information over here, some numbers here for directory. Then set, press the button set, and save. Save is not necessary in all machines, but set is compulsory. And then you scroll, you have to change the scroll, that big button in the center, and move it to the systolic frame. And in the systolic frame, again you have to trace the whole LV in systole, and you have to include the papillary muscles in it. There are two schools of thoughts on this, whether to include the papillary muscles or not, but you have to include it and get the numbers for systole of area. And then diastolic area has to be the systolic area minus the diastolic area, that is take the LV-EDA minus LV-ESA and divide it again by the diastolic area, and then into 100 it gives you FAC. Okay, so normal LV function or the normal FAC for normal LV function is 30 to 45%, impaired is 20 to 30%, and severe LV dysfunction when the FAC is less than 20%. Now coming to the last, that is the method of this. This we actually never do, but people are very like they always want to know this method of this. Whoever comes for my workshops also, they always ask me to tell this method of this. That is why I have included in this. So this is also called as modified Simpson's rule or the biplane method of this. When we are going to see the LV in two views, that is the apical 4-chamber view and the apical 2-chamber view. 4-chamber view and 2-chamber view. And what happens is, in this we have to trace the whole LV, and then you have to just put the set button. You have to just press the set button, and then this LV gets divided into discs. That is 20 discs of equal heights, which are perpendicular to the axis of the LV, and then this gets each cylinder, it becomes like just each cylinder, and the formula is calculated, and automatically it is calculated by the echo machine, and then the value of ejection fraction pops on the screen. So how we do this? First, let me tell you about the biplane Simpson's method. So what you have to do just is you have to get a 4-chamber view, and then you have to keep your scroll here. Once you get it here, you have to just press the inner border or the endocardium of the LV. You come till here and press the set button. When you press the set button, this automatically comes, and then you will get all the readings over here. After that set, you have to save this, move the scroller or the big center button, and then take it into systole again. So you have to take it diastole as well as systole. Okay, and this has to be done in 4-chamber view as well as then in 2-chamber view as well, and then EF automatically comes on the screen. If the EF doesn't come, this is the formula, or you have to just know the formula, that is the LV end diastolic volume minus LV end systolic volume upon LV end diastolic volume. Like here you have got only the volumes, and you can just see, you can even if you get only volumes like this, see, here we can see nicely the end diastolic volume and end systolic volume has also come, the stroke volume has come on its own, and the ejection fraction has been calculated by the machine. Usually every time the machine calculates ejection fraction, but if you want to know how to take it, it is just end diastolic volume minus end systolic volume, that will be 131 minus 55, that is 76, and thus upon end diastolic volume, which is 76 upon 131 into 100, that is 58. So 58 is the ejection fraction of this patient, and this is how it is, the volume during the end systole and during the end diastole and during the end systole. Okay, so this image is self-explanatory if you keenly say it, and it will be easy to know how to get it by Simpson's method. So that was all about systolic function, ejection fraction, and various methods to know the ejection fraction. And last but not the least is the cardiac output measurement. Cardiac output measurement is very important when you have patients who are into sudden hypotension, or or if they get into some trouble, or hypotension or myocardial ischemia, or any problem which is going to which has extreme arrhythmias and hypotension, and you don't find any other cause. You can just see if the cardiac output of this patient is okay, or even if you want to give fluids or blood transfusions, you can just determine the cardiac output for them. And how do you do it? Cardiac output, as you know, is stroke volume into heart rate. So stroke volume is determined by cross-sectional area into VTI. Now what is this? This cross-sectional area, because the stroke volume comes out from the aorta. So aorta is considered a cylinder, and therefore the cross-sectional area will be pi r square. Okay, pi r square. So r is determined by diameter upon 2. So from where to get this diameter? So this is the LVOT diameter. Okay, so how to get this diameter? So get a parasternal long axis view, and just below the aortic valve, up to 0.5 centimeters below the aortic valve, you have to take this diameter. So if this diameter comes to 2 centimeters, here it is 2 centimeters, so the radius will be 1 centimeter. So we have to make use of the radius. So pi r square, pi will be 3.14 into 1 square. So 3.14. Okay. Now cardiac output is actually this 3.14 of ours into VTI, into heart rate. So heart rate will take 70. Now how to determine this VTI? What is VTI? VTI is the velocity time integral, and it is actually the area in this spectral curve. And what does this indicate? This indicates how far the blood has traveled during this flow period. So this is very important, and what we have to do is this spectral envelope of this blood flow, we have to just trace it. How do you trace it? How do you get this flow, this spectral envelope first? For that, what you have to do is take a 5-chamber view wherein the aorta will be opened, because stroke volume is delivered through the aorta. So you have to open the aorta by apical 5-chamber view. Take a apical 5-chamber view here and place PWD, pulse wave Doppler. Once the pulse wave Doppler is placed in it, on the aortic valve, at the aortic valve, just place it and just press the PWD. Once you press the PWD, you will get such spectral envelope. Okay, just trace it fully by using the cursor like this, and you will get VTI. It comes automatically, VTI. Okay, so now the VTI is 21 centimeters, that is you can get 20 centimeters. So going back to the formula, it was 3.14 into 1 into 20 into 70. So this is 3.14 into 1 is 3.14 into 20, 3 to the 6. 6 into heart rate is 70. So this comes to 42. Something, the cardiac output is around 4 liters. So that is how you have to say, or you have to determine the cardiac output. I hope you understand all these things, because this is very important as to how to determine the cardiac output. But in the advanced machines, if you have the advanced machines, you already have the settings of cardiac output measurement, and once you measure these two parameters, it automatically comes. So you need not worry if you have the higher end machines, but any which ways you have to know the actual methods and the formulas for determining the cardiac output, that is pi r square into VTI into heart rate. And that was all about systolic function, ejection fraction, and cardiac output determination. And do visit the website cardiacanalysis.in. If you don't remember the name of the website, you Google my name and it appears, and visit it. And thank you, Nilesh Mathankar sir, for accompanying me today. And thank you, Tas, for giving me this opportunity to share the echocardiography. And yes, I want each one of you to start doing echo by yourself. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amarja. And dear all, we eagerly wait for you for the fourth class, which is equally important, that is mitral valve and aortic valve measurement assessment. And hope to see you soon, Dr. Amarja. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.